Hey guys, in this video, I want to address a topic that I feel has been at the back of all of our minds during these strange and hard times with the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the pandemic, practically everyone has been told to stay home and to not interact out in public to avoid getting sick. So, because we're all staying at home, many people have extra time on their hands to spare. Whether it be watching movies or reading a book, lots of people have been wondering what to do with their free time, and the gaming community is definitely not excluded from this. March, April, and May have been very big and impactful months for gaming. These 3 months have seen the release of Animal Crossing, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Doom, Persona 5 Royal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and more. Due to the pandemic, many people haven't been able to work. Because of this, people aren't getting paychecks and therefore cannot buy these games. On top of that, people should definitely be spending their money, or at least the majority of it, towards essentials like groceries. Now, if you have the extra cash, which one of these games should you consider on buying? Well, let's discuss. Let's begin with Animal Crossing and Doom. I personally have never played a Doom game. First-person shooters never really were my genre, and especially the sci-fi ones. Now, I can still get behind some, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 for sure, but if sci-fi FPSs are your thing, then Doom might be a good pick for you, I guess. As far as Animal Crossing is concerned, I was actually able to play it off of a friend's eShop account digitally, so while I don't own the game, I did get to play my fair share of it through their account, and may I just say, nice. Animal Crossing is built to be a game that people play day to day in sessions. If you play 6+ hours straight in one sitting, great. But the nature of the game is meant to be played in bursts. It really doesn't matter though. The goal of the game is to upgrade your personal island with as much stuff as possible, whether it being, building new decorations for your house and island, or upgrading buildings, etc. Because the game functions on a real-time clock and calendar, you will have to wait in real time for your in-game benefits to fulfill themselves or to expire. This can easily be bypassed though by changing the Switch's eternal clock, which is incredibly easy to do. This allows the game to essentially speed up, the wait time on items and to upgrades from a real 24+ hour wait to mere minutes, seconds, nanoseconds, and that whole spiel. If you're a fan of games like Stardew Valley, creative mode in Minecraft, and more, then you will definitely like Animal Crossing quite a bit. I am personally not a huge fan of those types of games, but I heavily enjoyed the bit of Animal Crossing New Horizons that I played until, Persona 5 came out. Speaking of which, let's talk about Persona 5 Royal and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. These two games are probably the most anticipated games between the first 3 months, as this whole 3-month span, as far as JRPG fans are concerned. Now, don't get me wrong, Xenoblade is a big hit too, but I think that Persona 5 and FF7 just garner more attention by nature. Both Royal and the 7 Remake are retellings or reimaginings of their source material, being Persona 5 and FF7 respectively. Persona 5 Royal adds new characters, new personas, and a vastly large unlockable post-game that furthers the game's story behind the original ending. As someone who played the original Persona 5 for over 200+ hours, Persona 5 Royal was worth getting. It truthfully brought me back to the same enjoyment and feelings that I felt when playing the original game for the first time, on top of having new content that I was looking forward to. The Final Fantasy VII Remake, on the other hand, is a full-fledged remake of its 1997 original counterpart. Everything is new. The character models, the music, the areas, and even a good portion of the story. Now, the original FF7 was distributed in 3 discs. Disc 1 carried roughly 40% of the game's plot and gameplay, Disc 2 had probably 50%, and Disc 3 had the remaining 10%. The Final Fantasy Remake only taps into about, I'd say 15% of content within that first 40%. So not like 15% of FF7 as in its entirety, but 15% of that first 40. All in all, the Final Fantasy VII Remake barely taps into everything that its original counterpart had to offer. Now, don't get me wrong, the Final Fantasy VII Remake is a quote-unquote full-fledged game. But in comparison to its original counterpart, it's about a tenth, even if that, of what we would consider it to be a remake. I'll get more into this when I cover FF7 and its remake in a separate video, which will probably come sooner rather than later, but I'm just going to leave that there for now. So when it comes down to either getting Persona 5 Royal or the FF7 remake, I would personally vouch for Persona 5 Royal. The 7 remake is not made to be a complete story because it's not a complete story. Getting the game and beating it will only hunger you for more, which realistically will not be happening for several years. Persona 5 Royal is not only complete in the context of its story, but enhances on the fantastic story and gameplay that the original game had offered. Royal really is everything that the first game was, and then some, so there isn't really any point in getting Royal first and then getting the original. If you want the best experience, however, in my opinion, get the original game first, and then get Royal. Appreciating Royal for all of the new content that it holds compared to the original is honestly what made Royal so good for me. If I would have played Royal bare and not had the experience of the first game, I don't think I would have appreciated Royal as much as I did. Now, I'm not saying this to mean that I did not enjoy the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but currently as it stands, I would recommend to play the remake closer to its follow-up's release. More on that in a separate video. Next, we have Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition remake thing. I personally played about an hour and a half's worth of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon remake, and I just didn't care much for it. I played the original Game Boy and DS sequels countless times, so the remake just didn't give me enough of a reason to continue aside from, the whole Winnie the Pooh aesthetic, which I did enjoy a lot, but aside from that, story and gameplay-wise, there just wasn't enough for me to look forward to. Pokemon spin-off games should follow this art style, the whole Winnie the Pooh vibe, in my opinion. The Xenoblade Chronicles remake is also the only game on this list that has yet to release as of the recording of this video. Just from a face value perspective, I would prefer to recommend the Xenoblade remake over the Final Fantasy VII remake, simply because you're getting the full experience with the story and not a chopped up portion of a chopped up portion. With that being said though, Xenoblade then competes with Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 was heavily praised worldwide for its story, soundtrack, characters, and plot. Xenoblade was too, once its original game made it worldwide, but to be completely honest, Xenoblade has been given the short end of the stick multiple times. It was released worldwide at the end of both the Wii and the 3DS's lifespan, and then it had a spin-off sequel made for the Wii U, which did not do that good, and it also drastically differs than the original Xenoblade does as well. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was heavily enjoyed because it went back to the roots of the original game in terms of the world and its own separate story and gameplay. It was more on the anime side, but it was still, back to the roots of the original game. Since I've never played the original Xenoblade, I can't say how it fares against Persona 5's base game. I personally loved Persona 5, so it would take a lot for Xenoblade to do to make me want to get it over Royal. I definitely, however, would prefer the Xenoblade remake over the FF7 remake as it currently stands. Aside from competing against the March and April games, I personally think that the Xenoblade game should be delayed. I know fans are anticipating to play it, especially because everyone is stuck at home, but my personal perspective is this. If everyone is stuck at home and very little people are working, how can the vast majority of people pay for it and then enjoy the Xenoblade remake? I think the FF7 remake is a prime example of what could happen to a game if it would be released during this whole quarantine mess. They had to push the release date back twice, and then canceled numerous pre-orders. Square Enix loves to gloat about their games, selling a lot of units within a couple days of that game coming out. They did it with FF15, they did it with Octopath, they did it with Kingdom Hearts 3. They haven't done it with FF7 Remake because they just physically couldn't sell as many units as they were expecting, which, all in all, could potentially hurt the company, since this was their big game that they've been pushing for nearly 5 years. Square Enix was also so preoccupied with the FF7 remake, it honestly also hurt the development of other AAA games they were working on, like Kingdom Hearts 3. And look at how that turned out. I say this all to mean that I personally think it would be the best and wisest decision for both Monolith and Nintendo to push the Xenoblade remake to early or mid-July at the earliest. That's my personal opinion on the matter. Feel free to disagree. So guys, we're all living in some very strange times. It's kind of, school history book moments. The world has been hit by a storm and we're all trying to get by. This video was just made with the intention of trying to help people decide what game or games, to get during this whole coronavirus pandemic. And of course, this video is subject to my opinion of which games are quote-unquote worth getting over others, so please understand. Anyways, guys, I hope quarantining goes well for you all, and I'll see you all later. Peace.